I noticed that a whole lot of people seem to prefer to ride bikes through here, so look, I'm flying through on bikes. I did a cartoon about it recently. Hold on. Oh, he was a nice guy, one of the few people out here walking. But as I said, most people ride the bikes, they fly through, they run over stuff, they run over lizards, bugs, you know, they tend to miss everything. And that's another idea of missing things, basically missing reality, is that, say for example, there's a cloud in the sky. So, oh, there's a cloud, you know, so you see the cloud. If the cloud weren't there, you wouldn't see the sky, or not really. It's like, well, what else do you see? Well, nothing, there's nothing else up there, but the sky's up there, you know, and the sky's everything. So what happens when you don't see the sky, or you don't see everything? And as I talked about last time, the human experience for the most part is people entangled in thought and emotion. And these two elements, well, one drives the other. I guess it kind of works symbiotically, maybe. Give that some thought too. But when it comes to thought, there are different kinds of thought, and if you have someone, say, what we would consider to be scientifically brilliant, then no one would be able to understand how it was that they, you know, managed to achieve these lofty thoughts. And of course, there's usually a reason why. Interviewed people like Einstein, but for the most part, the thought is memory, often a replay of memory. So when you look at the memory in the person, you could say that's also divided into two aspects. One is experience, also connected to the emotions. Then the other side is a little bit like experience, but it's more like a diet, and I would call it memorization. So carrying around a memory bank of information that largely, I mean, you get some of it force-fed in school, you know, especially when you're little. But most of it comes from seeking on the part of the person themselves. So you might meet someone, say for example, like I did the other day, who for different reasons does nothing but watch movies all the time. Different things came up, but everything that came up, every subject, instantly, oh, that was like that series or that movie, or you remember the actor, blah blah blah, you know, all this stuff. So anyway, we all kind of know what it's like to meet someone and get bombarded with their memory bank, you know. When that happens, they, in a sense, going back to the last talk, are dominating. So education, memory, these things, they're used sometimes to grow and learn, but often to dominate. More on domination, we have a word in our culture, especially America, that I'd like to completely retire, and that is, and it won't happen, is strong and strength, right? There's an idea, for example, that America, you know, and our founding fathers talked about our strengths, and it's like we are a strong country. Pardon me for speaking in tones of mockery. Doesn't really kind of paints a nicer picture of things, really. Prettifies things, because really our systems are functioning in what's called failure mode. So, you know, to just look at this, section of geography of our country and, you know, just tack these words on there. So anyway, what is strength and how is it used? Well, you might think of a strong man in the circus lifting weights. Okay, that's a demonstration of strength. You might think of a little baby lifting weights. You might think of all kinds of things. So you check your memory bank and see what you pull up for strength. Strength, you might get someone who says, well, strength is fluidity and, things like that, blah, 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 and knowing how to blend in with the background. Well, no, don't go in that direction because that's not it. Anyway, get right to the point, is that strength, the demonstration of, is a form of domination, basically. Could be subtle, could be overt. Say, for example, it's a word applied to women a lot now. So, oh, she's a strong woman. It's like, really? Well, where's the weak woman? What does the weak woman do? The weak woman is the one that gives up or commits suicide, or gets addicted to drugs or something, But again, when you look at the subtleties involved, the layers of meaning, well, it's like you're calling someone strong because you think it makes you look good. They may not even want to be called that. The reasons why they might be perceived as strong, it's like, would you really, really, really honestly look at those? It's like, what would they be? And like I said, layers of subtlety. You could have someone who was like, well, I had a horrible background, I was, orphaned and on drugs and da-da-da and crime and all this stuff. And now I'm a, well-known businessman with tons of money. It's like not happy, of course, But anyway, that person, victorious over their demons or whatever, then kind of publicly making a sort of gloating self-recommendation about it. Well, what is that? Is that domination? What is that? Or just getting your attention? What is that? It's like, well, if someone was such a brilliant success at solving their own problems, which I doubt they ever really did anyway, they just basically bought a new trumpet, then why wouldn't they take that and go to help other people that need help? Or do they even know how to give help? See, there again, it's like the mere act of helping. I have a textbook, psychology textbook, on helping. That's basically what it's called. And that book, it's this thick. You wouldn't believe how complicated it is simply trying to help someone so that they don't become dependent upon you, or you dominate, or all these levels, so that what you want to do is subtly allow them to solve their own problem, right? Give them the means to fix it. And doing that from a essentially passive stance, making a change through your own passivity. I mean, think about that. You know how to do that? You got that figured out? Going back to domination again. When an individual is locked into the behavior, basically all the time, even when they're sleeping and dreaming, then what you'll find is that there's always a reflection in the body, right? So it's just this mind-body idea that it's all one thing, of course, which it is. And so there's going to develop physical problems. Now, whether or not anyone pays any attention to that or even notices it, there's rampant diseases these days where they've developed over decades, and the person had no idea. Oh, I had to go to a doctor and get tested to realize this. And it's just like the cloud in the sky. It's like, well, without the cloud to look at, there's nothing there. And it's the same thing with thought, living in your thought, and emotion, psychological emotion, separating that from the physical aspect for a moment. So anyway, it just literally piles up in the body. So you could take, for example, the stereotype of a bully. So the bully was bullied as a child, so the bully becomes a bully, and the bully bullies others. One day he keels over and has a heart attack or has some other problem. Well, these things have been accumulating over time, these problems. And essentially how it works, if I could get a little metaphysical here, is that when you speak, usually that's what domination is. I mean, it can be physical, but you know, if you just watch Fox News or something, you'll see how physical, I mean, how verbal it is. So anyway, the way it works is that you speak, the words go out into the world. They may go to a person, they may go to the whole country or around the world or whatever, you know. You speak and the words go out. And then the response comes back. So if you're in person, you see the person's response. Say, for example, you're online, you may get, you know, comments and things like that. You know, like I do. So that's it coming back to you. And when it comes back to you, you receive it. It goes up to your head, basically to your memory, where it's kind of filed away. And then, because it basically doesn't do anything for anyone, is toxic, the rewards of bullying, basically, then it festers up there, has nowhere to go, just lost in it, you know, lost in these thoughts, loops, endless loops of negativity. Anyway, then it will travel down from the brain, down pathways into the body, and the body has to store that somewhere. So it could store it anywhere. It could store it in the intestines, in the stomach, in muscles. When you look at the number of people who have, you know, lumps, knots in their back, you know, in their muscles, that's where that comes from. They'll say it's stress. Oh, it's stress, you know, stress caused by other people. Really? Well, we're all sort of interlinked at this point. And one thing about, for example, bullying, which I did a cartoon about recently, is that to a lot of people, it's like they go looking for cruelty in the world because we are the good people, the good guys, we're the heroes, we're the strong. And so we must defeat these bullies wherever we see them. And of course, the bully needs to be healed. Let's save this worm. Basically, the bully needs therapy, you know. The bully needs to be healed and fixed. So basically, when an opportunity like that presents itself, which it does quite a bit on the left side in politics, it's like, oh, we've got to stand up for little people and fight the bullies and stuff. It's like, well, but then your behavior, you bully the bullies, basically, because if you're not healing them, you're bullying them. And so looking for social justice issues to serve as a permission slip to be dominant is that's rampant also. So anyway, it's all something to think about, how we got in this mess and everything. People are getting very worried about climate change right now, and there's all kinds of headlines. We're beginning to have shortages of chicken wings, and you know, you got the smoke covering the whole country from wildfires and bizarre weather patterns, things like that. And as I hinted at in another recent cartoon, was that science warns about global warming, but then again, science caused global warming. I said this last time, but I won't take it further in that. If you did want to get into a, what would you call it, frame of mind, pattern of behavior, whatever, survival mode, strength, yeah. I mean, what would people need to do to address these problems? Because you're not going to fix climate change by, you know, by what? Fixing the technology? No, it's the technology itself. So anyway, getting back to this idea of strength, it's like, well, we're so strong, but if you go to a shopping center, you'll notice everybody, you know, very intent on parking very close to the door, you know, keep the walking to a minimum. And that kind of, I wouldn't necessarily call it laziness, but I'd call it comfort. So there's so much stuff in our culture which is based on comfort. You know, the vehicles, the furniture, the air conditioning and heating, the thermostat, keeping things right at 72 so it's not 73 and you might really suffer. Did a cartoon about that too. Well, the more we do these things, the less we walk, the more we use these things, which I won't say take away our strength, I will say weaken the system. And so what is the way around that? Well, people will live in this lifestyle of, heating and cooling and driving and everything else, and then they'll go to the gym to work out to compensate for all of it. It's like, well, hell, oh shit, here comes somebody. If you lived in Europe or something like that, you could be, walking to the market and carrying all the groceries home, getting tons of exercise. So what would you actually do, to solve problems, to restore life, basically, in a better way? Well, a word I've used before is subtraction. So, for example, with COVID, when people stopped driving and began working at home, it's like, hey, everything could change. But we just had to subtract something. We subtracted the car. So how many things do you think you can reasonably subtract from your life? And you can list them all. Factory food, heating and cooling, gasoline, vehicles, synthetic materials everywhere. How much of that could you do without? Well, most people would say, well, I can't do without really hardly any of it. It's what I'm used to. It's what I deserve as a member of the strong citizen of the strong nation. Haha. Well, point is if it were all taken away, people would be better off for it. They'd be healthier and happier. Now, that's assuming that they have their domination patterns, subdued. Because you can have people that are indigenous and they still have wars with other groups and things like that. And sometimes those things apparently are fueled on diet. So, for example, cannibalism, I think, can make people more aggressive toward others, which is not surprising. But anyway, that's another sort of axiom, solving problems through subtraction. But anyway, I think that's about it for today. Just not really huge themes, building on the other ones a bit, and trying to set forward a place that people can be, not necessarily a system, but just a recognition of patterns and behaviors, right? Really when discussing a lot of these things, I talk about the universe and oneness and things like that, and then I'll take something like the person and divide them into thought and emotion and things like that. And you might think, well, isn't that doing the same thing, chopping things apart, And I think there's a difference between chopping things apart and essentially killing them, and recognizing that this is simply a facet. I think the facet is a good analogy or metaphor, because, for example, a gem or crystal is absolutely transparent. All sides are witness to all other sides, all other aspects. Yet, the facets are in fact separate. So that's probably the way dimensional things work as well, that we're in a certain dimension here, and that butterfly wing, it looks like a Luna moth. But anyway.